Okay, hello everyone. I'm your host, Eris. Today I've got Reens. That's the
Hello,
part where you
hello.
say hello. Yes, exactly. We've got Sushou.
It's
We've got Mono.
you're right here.
And we've got Crimson.
Hello.
He's joining us for the first time today. And you're very quiet. Let me raise your volume. Okay, try talking?
Is this good?
Huh?
Okay, I think that's better.
Okay.
Okay. So, first up, let's talk about Kafka. Who wants to run us through the basics? What does Kafka do? Our favorite criminal slash violinist slash absentee mother.
Take
Well.
your money.
Well,
First of
yes,
all,
that is true.
yes, she's our premier Dami mommy, as always. That's the important bit.
Yes.
So getting that out of the way. Getting that out of the way. She is our new dot unit. So basically, what does she do? She likes dots. She likes dot teams. She's going to basically enable a new type. Well, not a new type, but she's going to really enable dot teams to work to their full degree. So if we look at her kit, we're going to be looking primarily at her skill, ultimate, and talents. Her basics, nothing special, just your standard single target attack. Where Kafka really shines is her ability to trigger any dots that are on the enemy, which she can do through both her skill and her ultimate. And this shines both on her own, actually, and when you combine her with other dot units, Sampo, Serval, Luka, for example, she'll be able to trigger these repeatedly rather than waiting for the enemy turn. So that basically works around one of the main limitations of dot teams. And that really ties into just everything about her. The way you gear her, the way you do her teams. I think it's important to mention right off the bat that she's really unique in the sense that the damage she procs is not her damage, it's everyone else's damage, right? You have to invest on your other characters if you're running her, for example, with Sampo, with Luka, with Serval, because it's their damage you're proccing. She is it's not like she's not a character that appreciates investment, because she certainly does. If we want to go really into the breakdown of the kit, I guess we should start right away with her skill, what it does. So the skill is a blast. It's going to on one enemy. That's the one that will receive just any dot damage currently placed. So at max rank, that's 75% of any dots they have on them will proc and do that much damage. The ultimate works similarly. We're also doing 100% of dots, but this is to everyone. So this is her nice AoE to all enemies. Her talent is a follow-up attack. So anytime an ally uses a basic attack, she's gonna do a follow-up attack, do some flat damage. We won't talk too much about her flat damage, I think, because when you come down to it, her ratios, they're not bad, but they're not the main focus. You're always gonna be looking at the dot damage, and that will apply her own shock. So she does have her own dots that she does bring. And normally the ultimate is for shock damage, right? But we have to keep in mind that her A2, which everyone's going to have right away, is that it's all dot damage. So functionally, she's not just a shock dot unit. She's every type of dot unit, and we'll come back to this about the type of teammates she prefers and likes, because as it turns out, Serval probably I'd probably put her as like her number 3 choice in terms of teammates.
Ooh, mommy team.
Yep.
Okay. What about her A4 and her A6? What do we think of those?
I mean, her A4 is just her standard, if an enemy is defeated while shocked, she regenerates energy. Good, but not reliable. It will generally not change up your rotation.
Because you can't control when...
You can't, yeah, exactly. You can't control when something dies. She may or may not be able to benefit from this, depending on just how you are.
Okay. Does that change up if we're running both Kafka and Serval? You'll have more consistent shocks, and the damage dealers are both very shock-based. Or more accurately, they are consistent with their shock application.
The thing is, it's not gonna. The reason it's not gonna generally change anything up is because she already has a very clean energy profile. Like if you look at it, she does like a three turn energy profile, right? She has 3 skills and then 3 talents, and that will get her to full energy. The only time this is really going to change is if you're running someone like Yuan, where you can just fill her up and she's not going to have that clean 120 every time. But even then, it's very, you might be able to replace you have to proc it twice essentially in order to replace a talent usage on her.
Yeah, against stronger enemies, especially, it's just not gonna come up very often at all.
Yeah, it's only with high level Yuan, so it's not gonna. Otherwise, because her breakpoints is pretty much set already for 100% energy recharge requirement. So
that's fair.
It's
that
not
being
going
said,
to honestly make much of a difference.
No, fair enough. That being said, you guys will probably want to get this for the minor trace nodes here, because Kafka really likes these. And we'll get back to that when we talk about her stats. And then we have her A6, which is fairly straightforward. Just the base chance for target enemies to get shocked by the ultimate, the technique, or the talent-triggered follow-up attack increases by 30%. 30% base chance to guarantee your shock is pretty good, I'd imagine. Since
Yeah, I mean,
100%.
Functionally, this lowers her required effect hit rate to 129%. Without this, we'd be looking at a much higher rate. So there's no reason really not to get this. This is pretty much the equivalent of running an effect hit rate main stat piece. So you definitely want this.
Yeah. That sounds pretty good. So, you guys heard it. Prioritize getting her A6. That's pretty good. Okay, I think we can move on. Let's talk about build options. Sushou, why don't you take us into that? Let's talk about her relics for a start.
So, Kafka has, I would say, like two main options. The first one that is probably most generally recommended for most players is Band of Sizzling Thunder, the lightning set, the lightning relic set. It's very consistent. She shouldn't. Ideally, there's no reason why you should ever be using Kafka's basic attack. So she's going to have pretty much permanent uptime on the additional 20% attack buff that the 4-piece gives. For just in general, it's the most consistent set. It's not really conditional. I've heard that be like thrown around where it's conditional, but again, if you're using Kafka's basic attack, something somewhere has gone wrong. The lightning damages from the two pieces just really nice.
Because Kafka doesn't have much access to her own damage percentages.
Yeah, her dot damage is like the really big thing, because at max level, her own personal shock is 290%, and you know, just adding on any kind of additional damage to that is going to be, it's going to see the biggest increases for you. Second option, which is harder to use or requires a little bit more understanding, is the Quantum set, Genius of Brilliant Stars, 4-piece. The 2-piece is obviously completely wasted because she doesn't deal quantum damage, but the 4-piece has a defense ignore on it. When you deal damage to the target enemy, you ignore 10% of their defense. And if the target has a quantum weakness, you ignore an extra 10% for 20% total. We don't have a dedicated dot set right now. Maybe we'll get one in the future. But the way that this ends up, that this defense ignore ends up interacting with defense shreds and with ally buffs, so like supports harmony units, damage percents, attack percents, and whatnot. This can end up being in more optimized settings. It can end up being at equivalent to Band of Sizzling Thunder, and sometimes even better than it. But you know, it can be strange for people to be like, oh, let's farm the quantum set for this lightning character. But trust us, it does work. It is quite effective and efficient when it gets going. But again, the consistent option that doesn't rely on more optimized teams, more optimized settings is Band of Sizzling Thunder. So if you can get the 4-piece for that, that would be best. If you can't get 4-piece, or if you just get, you know, completely, you know, if the game is just trolling you relentlessly and you don't get any good stats, then you can just do 2-piece of Band of Sizzling Thunder and something like Wild Wheat, because it gives you the attack percent. Or you could also do 2-piece Band of Sizzling Thunder with 2-piece Messenger, potentially. It's a lesser option, but the extra speed is nice. It's a good kind of transition set until you get to a more fully built one.
Okay. I think maybe we can say that it's easier to go 2-piece Band, 2-piece Wheat, because while you did mention that you're almost always using your skill, sometimes, you know, like we've personally experienced recently, things don't go according to plan, and you know, you get CC'd to high hell and back. And sometimes you need to utilize other abilities, like on-demand healing. That might mess up your skill point economy. And like you mentioned, there is the matter of substats to consider.
Yeah, especially for that one. So 2-piece is a lot easier, like you say, since, well, people who are actively doing the weekly bosses are going to have spare Wild Wheat pieces lying around, most likely. And some of them could be gold. Not just in color, but like an actual effectiveness as well. And that could end up being significantly better. And in terms of again, the big thing that I think is always important to keep in mind is how good or bad are the substats, because don't force a 4-piece set effect if it's just not really going to be doing anything for you. Like if you have a crit rate main piece, body like chest piece, if you have a crit rate chest piece, but it has HP percent, defense percent, then that's kind of not a good piece, let's be real. But if you have, let's say that's on Band of Sizzling Thunder, but then you have a Wild Wheat piece, which is crit rate, and it has even just like attack percent on it, that would automatically be a better piece. Maybe it has speed on it. Maybe it actually does have crit damage on it. That is at that point, I would say you should be using that piece because it's just doing more for you. And again, if your overall stats are worse, then in most cases the 4-piece set effects of relics are also going to be doing less for you than if you had just switched to 2-piece. Same applies for choosing between Band of Sizzling Thunder and the Genius set, Genius of Brilliant Stars, because largely they're not very far apart in performance in general, and they can go higher or lower than each other based on what's happening in the fight. Again, if you don't get the skill on Kafka, then Band of Sizzling Thunder will begin to fall behind. If you have a better, more optimized team comp with buffs, debuffs, and the like, then Geniuses can end up being higher. But if the substats for one are just vastly superior to the other one, that's probably the one you should just go for. Like, it's best not to overcomplicate things. Don't be like, oh, I have to get Band of Sizzling Thunder, or I have to get Genius. It's like, whichever you get first, pretty much, that has good substats, you'll probably be fine with that.
Speaking of the Genius of Brilliant Stars, there was a change fairly recently where they changed how the defense ignoring works when it comes to DOT. Mono, why don't you talk to us about that a little bit while we're talking about?
So there have been a lot of sweeping changes every single patch, and 1.2's was that a lot of the damage percent increasing effects, such as on Welt's Sig and Defense Ignore from Genius in particular, has massively increased the efficacy of dots and also entanglement, as Sushou has taken good advantage of. So, for example, this ability on screen will work with dots, and so does Genius, which is why it's so effective, surprisingly. But it is a significant buff to dots, and a lot of other people can take advantage of it, particularly people will get into later, like break effect dot builds. Luka loves this change.
And there's more about that later, so stay tuned.
Yes. But this is why Genius is good. TLDR.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else we'd like to add about Relics?
I think we covered everything. I mean,
Do we want to talk about stats?
you
now?
can mention, you can mention that like Genius is probably, as far as account value goes, one of the most efficient sets you can farm, just because of how many characters can use it either as their best in slot or as like second best in slot with. And we're talking very small gaps here, like less than one substat difference between their true best in slot and Genius.
You're trading stability for account efficiency, because guard is also pretty good. but that's not for today.
Yeah,
City
because
Hall.
ultimately what it comes down to is you only have so much trailblazing power. So if you're trying to gear up 5 people,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, plus the Seal Silver Wolf players will probably have been in there for 9 years, so surely you can find a spare piece in there. Copium.
Surely.
as long as you've been saving up the right substats, I think that's what we want to talk about because she does want very different substats than your salary teams.
Before we get into substats, let's talk about Planars real quick. I think it's safe to say that her best planar is just, for the time being at least, Space Ceiling. I don't
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
else that comes even close.
Indisputable.
And it's pretty easy to meet the speed requirement because you're running speed boots on her.
Wasn't it at E1 you could also run Pan Galactic, but
yeah.
farming Pan Galactic?
You can. So
Farming
we'll go
Pangalactic
into
is
this.
pain.
Yeah, in general, it's just that Space Ceiling is more. It's not that Pangalactic becomes better. It's just past D1, Pangalactic becomes essentially equal to Space Ceiling. So there's no reason not to just go for Space Ceiling right away,
Yeah.
even if you have a high Eidolon Kafka.
The problem is Celestial Differentiator is just not really a thing for anyone right now.
Yeah.
And you get fucking Fleet as your alt on the other side, so it's just kind of like
Exactly.
And you know what? That's what your supports want on a Kafka team. They want that fleet. So there you go.
Attack stacking. This is just the most efficient to farm for your Kafka team. Because at the same time, you're most likely running someone like Sampo, and he also really likes Space Ceiling. So all around, it's just something you'd really want to farm for your Kafka team.
Yeah. It's
On
also
that
just
note-
a very consistent set for other characters as well.
please do Fleet and not Keel. Some people might be on autopilot.
Do
Switch
not
to your
put
Keels.
Keel on your Kafka team, please. Like,
Is this
okay.
the segue?
Yes, no, this is the segue. The segue has to start with a very important note on her stat priority.
Yeah.
And that is do not build crit.
If you build
not.
crit, I will find you,
No.
and I will come and steal your keycaps. Okay, guys?
Do not.
I will steal your
Please.
keycaps. You will not be able to type. Okay?
Please,
Just
we beg you. We've
do
read
not.
some.
Do not build crit on your Kafka. I don't want to see
You're
crit stats on your
incredible
Kafka, guys.
But please.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people fall into this trap, whether it's just from not knowing the fact that dots do not crit, or it's just autopilot from other DPS. Like I said before, her base multipliers are not amazing. They're there, but they're not the majority of her damage.
That's putting it
And
nicely.
you should not be relying on those for her damage. You should not be building on for them, which means no crit. Her priorities as far as stats go, first of all, just being a debuff unit, she does want a little bit of effect hit rate. At E1, that's 128%. Sorry, at E0. Apologies. So it's not a lot. You can generally get that just from substats. That's what I'd recommend anyway. I wouldn't recommend running a main stat piece because it's really overkill if you do. Especially between her traces and everything. At E1, her EHR requirements go up to about 159 because of the extra dot from that. But all things assuming it's a pretty low effect hit rate requirement. Once you're finished with that, speed is the name of the game for her. She's gonna want speed boots. She's gonna want speed substats. It's not really negotiable for her in terms of speed boots, right? I think even unless you're running her specifically with Bronya to make up for that fact, I don't think there's any situation where you'd run attack boots on her.
Nah, it's just unquestionable, I think.
Right.
Yeah,
And
you lose too
going
much.
from there, what do you build in place of crit? You're going to build attack percent. Dots primarily are scaling off of attack percent. Now, keep in mind, they also scale off damage percent. So you do want a lightning sphere on her. Don't go Don't go full attack percent. And lastly, it's not something you should build for, but if you do get it, break effect is not bad. She is going to be doing a lot of breaking, especially against lightning weak enemies. But again, it's not guaranteed that it's going to be her doing the breaking, and it's not something you should build for, because one thing is she cannot refresh break effect shock. It is different than the shock she applies. She can proc it, but she can't refresh it.
Yeah. Break effect percent as a stat is very... it's very insular. It basically interacts with only one thing, and then that thing also doesn't interact with anything outside of it. So if you build break effect percent, the only thing it's going to affect is the break dot, okay? It doesn't affect any other dots. We just really want to clarify that, because we still sometimes see people who are suggesting to do break effect in hopes of buffing all dot damage. It's not the case. And break effect percent affects only break dots, and break dots are only affected by break effect percent.
Yes.
That is...
And another thing, if you are going to go all in on some character to like go out of your way to have them trigger break dot, which shouldn't be Kafka, by the way, as we've said, then that immediately means break effect on every other character, including Kafka, is now worthless, because you can only realistically have one character breaks dot on at once. That's a constrained resource. So keep that in mind. But there is a lot of potential in doing all-in break effect on a dot supplier for Kafka to trigger. We'll talk about that later. But for Kafka herself, like, it's either okay or worthless, depending on your team plan. So keep that in mind.
So
That's
to wrap
how-
it up... Oh, sorry,
That's
Mono,
how
go ahead.
Yeah, that's how break effect is evaluated in general. I think literally only break effect Serval breaks this mold. Yeah, I'm done. Continue.
So to sum it up, AHR till you get your requirements, attack, and then if you get any break effect, but don't go out of your way to build break effect. It's just not worth it. We'll talk more about break effect later once we get to our newest character, Vi from the hit series Arcane.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be fun.
I love Vi from the hit series Arcane.
He's not talked about much, but he's got some interesting things going on. That is not possible before.
I think it's a safe thing to say that he's a little bit underrated right now.
A little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People are sleeping on him.
I mean, okay. I mean, okay. Let's just say people should look at this art more often, and then maybe they'd be doing a different kind of sleeping. just saying, you guys. But speaking of Lightcone art, let's talk about Kafka's options. Let's start up with her signature 5-star, the dinner date with Kafka. Patience is all you need. Grim, why don't you take us through these?
Okay, so her light cone actually isn't as good as you might initially think, because you see damage increase, extra speed, and another dot that she gets to trigger. But if you have other light cones like Good Night Sleep Well, it's not much of an increase over those. So it's really this banner is probably something you'd maybe consider if you're looking for improvements for your other dot characters, or you didn't have many options for your Sampo or your Luka. And for her, Good Night Sleep Well is in most of her dot teams is quite easy to keep up the 3-stack passive. So at S5, that's giving you a crazy 72% boost to dot damage. So that's generally her best 4-star. And then for a free-to-play option, we also have Fermata, which at S5, that's generally slightly worse than Good Night Sleep Well. And so that'll be, since that's free, you can get it from the Memory of Chaos shop. And so at a baseline, if you don't have any light cone, you can always rely on going for that. And then there's some other ones like Welt's light cone that you might have. But generally, I don't think it's really, other than a stat stick, it's not really that great to consider on her. The damage to debuffed enemies is good, but since her skill doesn't proc the dot, the effect hit rate gets kind of wasted on her. And while the attack boost is nice, she's kind of lacking in damage percent in her kit, so you generally prefer going for cones that boost damage more than focusing on attack. And then there's also Sampo's light cone, Eyes of the Prey. And generally the effect hit rate is also kind of wasted on her due to her low requirements at E0. But at E1, since she does have the higher 59% requirement, the effect hit rate is actually quite good on her, and the dot damage boost is also great for her.
Yeah. That's a big TLDR of her recommendations is Good Night Sleep Well is pretty fucking illegal if you have it. So, for a lot of players, it's either going to be that or Fermata. But, she has a lot of okay options at minimum, so won't be too hard to find a good light cone for her.
So to sum it up, signature is, not necessary. It's good, it's not bad, but, not something you need to go out of your way for unless you're a big old Kafka lover. Good night, sleep well. Best 4-star, especially at higher superimpositions. If you have that, use it. And then if you don't have anything else, Fermata is pretty based. Come on, guys, look at this art. And it's free to get. You can get it as a weekly, as a drop from weekly bosses, and you can get it from the Memory of Chaos shop. So you don't have a reason to be running anything else. Like I don't want to see anyone coping with stuff like, I don't know, loop. Please don't do that. Please don't cope with loop.
No, I mean you have a really good baseline on her through Fermata. It's at S1 it's good, S5 it's very good. It's within 10% of her sig, so it's not like you're missing out much. She is essentially very free to play friendly in that respect.
Yeah, I mean the combination of just caring about attack percent and having a literal free to play best in slot is pretty makes her pretty friendly. I'd say like their only problem is the fact that you need to invest pretty heavily into all of your units. You can't make compromises, but other than that, she's a pretty solid option with pretty solid gearing choices. Anything else that we'd like to add?
I mean, if you want to compare investment value, like in terms of Eidolons versus her weapon sig. She's one of the better options is to get her E1 over her signature. Just in terms of raw numbers, it's about twice as effective. Because a lot of people do like to ask that question.
Speaking of asking questions, someone in chat just asked, I heard that Kritka is outputting more damage than Dotka. I think personal damage-wise. Is this true? Okay, we've been over this. Here, let me just point something out, okay? I'm gonna go to her traces. Her ultimate. At level 10, mind you, this is a literally maxed ultimate. Deals lightning damage equal to 80% of Kafka's attack to all enemies. You're doing 80% on a max level ultimate of her attack. Do you really think that's worth building crit for? And then you continue reading, and it says, while shocked, enemies receive lightning DOT equal to 290% of Kafka's attack at the beginning of each turn. At this point, it's 80% versus 290%. Which would you rather go for? Because keep in mind, DOTs can't crit, so crit is completely wasted. And I don't think there's realistically any way, like any measure of investment at the current moment that will make crit Kafka do more damage than DOT Kafka. Like,
And
yeah.
before any rail comes and says anything, we have Crim here, and
Yeah.
crit is not good, even at that point.
Crim is E6, S5? Do you have
And it's still like not good at all. Her dot damage is like 70+% of her damage spread. So you're not really going to make up that difference by investing into crit.
Guys, at level 10, it's 80%. A basic attack at level 6 is 100%. It literally does less than a basic attack at max level. Just please don't build crit Kafka, at least at the current time. It's just it's not doing too hot. Now that does let us segue into a different topic. Kafka's teams, you don't need to run her with a different or another DOT character. We talked a little about this earlier, but you're not forced to run her with someone like Sampo or Luka or Serval. And that being said, if you do want her to run her with another DOT, we've got a few options. Let's start with Sampo and Luka. When do you run either? Sushou, Sushou doesn't seem to be here.
Yeah, Sushou one.
Yeah.
I can start here. I think at the very baseline, kind of what you're looking at is AoE versus single target, right? If you have one big meaty target, Luka's your guy. Bleed is quite good on bosses. So Bleed has % max scaling. You are back. It's all good. But but the main issue with Luka is that he is primarily stacking it on a single target. He's has no real way to be applying it to everyone. Everything's single target on him. And Bleed by itself is best on these big meaty targets. It's not gonna do impressive damage on small adds. Sampo, on the other hand, he has a lot of AoE. He can apply pretty much screen-wide AoE through his ultimate. His bounces will generally cover everyone. And he's going to really have no issue kind of cleaning up ads. Despite what we said about Kafka, outside of her ultimate, she doesn't actually cover AoE that well by herself, right? Her skill only procs the dots on a single target. And there is minor blast damage, but it's basically negligible in the long term. It's there for the toughness break. That's really it. I think the other question that people are going to ask then is, how does Serval fit into this, right?
Mm.
Because she's kind of your third option when we're talking about dot characters, and I think a lot of people went into this going with, oh, she's a shock character, Serval is a shock character, synergy, right? But kind of unintuitively, that's the main reason for a lack of synergy, if you will. One thing I've noticed right away with Kafka is she has really no issue maintaining shock between her follow-ups and her skill. She doesn't have any problems with shock uptime. She doesn't really benefit from Serval's shock extensions. And Serval kind of falls into this middle of the road position where she's a lot like Kafka in that she actually, outside of her ultimate, struggles to apply shock to everyone, right? When she's using her skill, it's not going to generally apply it's blast. Again, it's not a true AoE. So in true AoE situations, she's going to fall short of someone like Sampo.
Well, that and the fact that it's an 80% base chance, so it's...
Right. So without going into numbers too, yeah, if you're running her as a dot character, number one, she's not a true dot character. She's primarily a standard AoE DPS character who should be built as a standard DPS character. You're sacrificing quite a lot of her damage to build her dot focus, which we mean by that is instead of focusing on your standard crit rate first and then attack and percent damage, she'd be focusing purely on percent damage, because she doesn't have the multipliers on her dots that Sampo, that Luka have. It's nowhere close. Like if we're talking, Sampo has 244 on his skill versus Kafka's 104. It's more than double.
Serval's. Not
Yes,
Serval's,
yes.
not Kafka's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's. I think it might be safer to say that you should look at her Serval as less of a DOT character and more of a sort of pseudo follow-up character. Because of the way her talent works. Because like you said, her DOT
definitely
is really not that. Like it's
there
not
is
much
one. Yeah, there is one situation where she really does have a unique place that nobody else can perform, and that's the fact that she, like I said before, her shock extension isn't generally useful because Kafka has no issue with uptime. But one place it is useful is if you're doing the break effect Serval. Now this is kind of a niche build, but she can extend break effect shock. So suddenly your not quite reliable break effect becomes very reliable with her. And there's really nobody else in this niche that can do that.
And for those unaware, when we say break effect Serval, we mean Serval with traditional setup, with the exception of her rope, where you swap the attack for a break effect rope.
And you go all in on subs. This build was previously only just to shortcut your investment on Serval, but Serval is one of the reasonable candidates for using all-in break effect builds to support Kafka. That being said, you will have to go out of your way to make sure she breaks every single time. Well, actually, you only need to do it once, realistically.
Yeah,
Serval
you need to do it once, and then you extend
Maintain it, yeah.
Yes, and it sacrifices the value of break effect on everyone else. So
yeah. This is what Mono was mentioning earlier with the break effect becoming useless if you have to focus on one character and one character alone doing it.
Yes.
The
Plus
other
having
thing
to...
is...
Sorry, go.
No, I was just gonna say real quick. The other thing is, if you're doing break effects or fall, you have to get her to 80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it can get pretty expensive having to fine tune it.
I mean, just in general, that's also it's an expensive build anyway, because I wouldn't realistically run it unless you already have Silverwolf.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's really only a viable option against lightning weak enemies. So you're really limiting what you can fight.
And even then,
Yeah,
like
coverage.
when we're talking and like when we're talking actual gameplay, against later MOCs, it's very hard to justify delaying certain actions just so that Serval can be the one to break. Because sometimes that can just mean the difference between losing out on a star or even failing the run entirely and, getting some more damage. So,
Yeah, that-
while break effect is just it's nice when you can get it, it's not consistent and it can be problematic. Yeah, go ahead, Sushou.
that's what I was getting into. That it is the opportunity cost is that you have to make sure, you have to not even make sure, you have to specifically go out of your way to ensure that your break effect built unit is the one breaking. And if that can sometimes, or not even sometimes, that can often be very disruptive to the playstyle of your other characters. And sometimes it's just not possible to avoid breaking with a different character. Like, if you have no choice but to basic attack, for example, on a team with Kafka, and Kafka follows up with her talent and it breaks the enemy, unlucky. You've just lost a colossal amount of damage, and there wasn't really any way for you to avoid doing that. You could, of course, sit on Serval's ultimate to do this, but that's also very problematic. So it's you need to really know what you're doing when going for this particular break effect setup, because I mean, aside from the aforementioned reasons that it's very expensive, it takes a lot of resources to even just get to that point, but then actually utilizing it in a meaningful way is also very difficult.
Yes, it's specifically lightning focused. If you were using break effect Serval already as a free-to-play player and you wanted a decent AoE lightning option, then you might have this already. It's good against other lightning weak enemies. The main downside, if you come it from that angle, is as we said, it takes a lot of headspace to play this correctly. So if you have other dots or potential break effect users, then perhaps Serval would not be the best choice, but she does fit.
For context, guys, it's around 300 purple books and almost 6 million credits to level 80 a character. And we're just talking about level 80ing. We're not talking about the stagnant shadows that you have to farm. We're not talking about any traces that you might need. None of that. It's literally just that is how much you need to 80 a character. It's incredibly expensive. So while it can be fun, while it can be strong, do think about the opportunity cost and what you have to give up to get to that point. But I think we covered enough of Serval and just her damage dealing options in general. I don't really think she has other damage dealers that she'd like to be paired with. She doesn't want to be paired with, hunt characters because they tend to be selfish and want different teammates than the ones she likes. Welt, just don't do slows and DOTs. It's pretty not smart. So I think we can just get into her buffers, debuffers, healers, shielders. Let's get into her supports. Let's give this one to Mono. Mono, why don't you take us off with her buffers to begin with?
Okay, so because of those changes that I was talking about earlier, she has a significantly wider variety of supports that actually work with her. That being said, the standout option that was lined up for her anyway is Asta. Her speed is incredible on Kafka, and so is her attack boosting. So this will be the very obvious include if you don't have her tied to the hip to your other team. I definitely recommend using Asta as your first consideration. But there are other great options too. Silverwolf is great, can open up another dot related weakness for you to stack with. Kafka's skill, it can reduce defense to make a genius much more appealing on her, and can potentially activate its increased defense down. It, in general, good option if you don't want to use Asta. There's Pela, also a good include for the same reason. Doesn't have the weakness implant, but the buff removal can be useful. Her ult can get AoE defense down coverage to, unlike Silverwolf, if that's a relevant trait for you. And let me see.
Let's not forget, Pela actually gives some EHR as well. 10% is almost half of what Kafka needs.
Yeah, you can use that as a band-aid for investment if you have not reached that.
Well, I think more so than just a band-aid. Like, if you're running Pela, that just means you can afford to run more offensive stats on your Kafka. Or at the very least, worry less about your effect hit rate.
Yes, that is also true. And Tingyun, finally, is the last person to significantly benefit from the dot changes that happened this patch. Her damage percent buffs actually work with dots now, so her increase to Kafka's damage is sizable. Even though it's very unlikely for her to actually land a break dot. Her interaction with Kafka's talent and the fact that she wants to stack her attack percent to crazy levels means Tingyun herself is also going to hit like a truck. So it is very worth to consider Tingyun as an option, even though her dot interaction is not much directly. It's more Kafka's other traits that she's playing off of. And then finally, for your defensive unit, you will actually have a higher preference towards a ice character. March 7th or Japard. You probably will not be able to get away with using March 7th as a sole defensive unit, but Japard can. Anyway,
I feel like we should explain that a little bit. The reason March isn't great, well, it's for a couple of reasons. One, very SP hungry. You have to cast a skill if you want to be defensive. And the other thing is, her shield just isn't strong enough to justify being defensive, especially in later stages where there's a bunch of AoE.
You'll be relying on her reactive healing at E6 if you have that.
Yeah.
Just patch up all the damage that was done already. You're probably going to be shielding. Yeah, so you're probably going to be shielding one, maybe two people at most, unless you have one of the more SP positive options we've gone over above. But the interaction with Freeze, which I think we'll be going over
We'll be going
right
over
now,
that
is
shortly.
yeah.
I do want to.
There are a couple of things that we should still talk about. Yeah, go on, Sushou.
Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to elaborate a bit on the Tingyun point because it ties into what was said earlier regarding break effect and such.
Mhm.
The again the exact wording was break effect only affects break dots, and break dots are only affected by break effect percent, and that's exactly the case. So Tingyun is not going to be improving the break dot if it is applied by Kafka, because it only cares about break effect percent, no matter what. And kind of a downside perhaps is that Tingyun is a single target buffer. So she's not going to be contributing. She's not going to be helping other damage dealers to improve their damage at all. So if you have, for example, Kafka and Sampo and Tingyun is buffing Kafka, well, Sampo is kind of just mostly there for his ult debuff at that point. He'll still do non-negligible damage, but Tingyun is going to be hard in on Kafka, and that's fine because again, Kafka's own dot is extremely powerful, and being affected by from the 1.2 changes to dots and such, you can reach some actually pretty crazy numbers. Not to mention the energy refund that Tingyun gives means that Kafka's going to be doing substantially more damage, especially thanks to her A2. Yeah, that ultimate is going to be big.
Okay, that's actually a great segue point into another thing that we should talk about. While crit Kafka is not something that you should be doing, you can consider running a sort of hyper Kafka.
Mhm.
Who wants to take that?
You can definitely use a defense down classic nihility debuffer harmony buffer with the sole defensive unit for extremely powerful personal damage on Kafka with the changes. That was the big point of the damage percent and defense down changes. So Kafka is not limited to Asta plus 2 dot suppliers, or plus 1 dot supplier, sorry. And it massively increases her variety in team comps, so you can mix and match all of these. And it'll probably be okay as long as you have good coverage and have the correct stat investment.
Yeah, Kafka is surprisingly flexible with the teammates that she wants, and especially because like the dot units and Serval, like Sampo, Luka, Serval, they all have their place. If you're just looking for coverage, or if you're doing like shock extension, then you don't necessarily need to feel pressured into going for specifically like Asta, for example, to buff everybody with the attack percent. If you choose to go for Tingyun, then you'll still benefit from the dot vulnerability that Sampo provides on his ultimate, like mentioned. You'll still benefit from Luka's damage taken debuff on his ultimate as well. So you have plenty of options. And again, you don't even need to pair the dot characters with Kafka. You can do a hyper Kafka setup, so to speak. If you just have, pick any two of buffers, debuffers, and put them together, and you'll probably have a pretty good team. Very good team, actually. Though I will say, because this is probably something that's going to get asked. Bronya. Now,
Great question.
Bronya is, as we all know, a very good character. This remains true even for Kafka. However, don't get baited. Don't build crit Kafka. I don't know how many more times we need to say that. Maybe we should just put a message somewhere that says,
literally,
we need this on the stream overlay right now.
yeah, do not
no,
build
no,
crit
no.
Kafka.
Oh,
No. Eris, put the quiet text in
Oh,
your stream.
God.
Do it.
God.
Same size. I don't care. Do it.
Just straight Comic Sans.
Yes.
Do not get baited. Do not build crit Kafka. I do not care how good your pieces are. You are griefing if you do it. Bronya is a big part of this bait because I imagine a lot of, I'm not even imagining, I've seen it where people suggest Bronya with Kafka, with crit Kafka as like it makes it so good. It's like it doesn't. Her multipliers, her upfront multipliers, honestly, really bad, terrible. Dot multiplier is where it's at. Now, Bronya does help Kafka, and you can use her with Kafka. And she'll actually be pretty good. 100% turn advance on the skill and the damage percent, really, really strong, especially like you basically just double Kafka's turns from the get-go, at least. And you end up being able to proc dots more frequently. You can double dip on the damage percent bonus from Bronya's skill by using her ultimate as like the extra action before finishing your turn. So then the ultimate also benefits from the damage percent. And Bronya's ultimate also gives attack percent in addition to the crit damage percent. The crit damage percent is completely wasted. I don't care how good your stats are. Again, don't do it. Don't do it. This is the reason why I think Bronya is lesser.
There is
than
a pretty
the other
line
options.
on this stream for you guys now. Just as requested, Comic Sans and everything.
Perfect.
Just for you guys. Is the crit good? No, the crit is not good.
No.
I don't need to read the rest of the sentence. The crit is not good. Do not crit.
The crit damage percent on Bronya's ultimate is entirely wasted in this setup. But just because of how universally applicable and universally good Bronya's skill is, with the 100% turn advance, with the obscene damage percent that you get for that one turn, and I mean, honestly, a really underrated aspect as well. The fact that it cleanses you of a debuff, that can also be extremely invaluable in certain cases where hard CC is a very real concern.
Looks at witches.
And I personally have tested Kafka with Bronya, and you do damage. You do big damage. It works actually surprisingly well. However, because the crit damage percent buff on her ultimate is entirely wasted, it feels worse knowing that Bronya could be better used for a more traditional damage dealer. Like if you have Blade, or if you have Yenqing or Sealer, or even like Sushou or something, Bronya is better spent on them because they can fully benefit from everything Bronya provides. And the other thing that can be really tricky to work around with Kafka Bronya is the SP requirements. That becomes a very SP intensive team very quickly, and if you put Kafka with Bronya, your third team slot is suddenly extremely limited because they need to be an SP generator, consistently. Because Bronya is looking to use skill on every turn, but so is Kafka. That's hard to sustain, especially if both of them are very, very quick.
I mean, not just your third, but your fourth too. You better not break Bailu.
Yeah. And it limits the amount of emergency SP that you could have, because bad luck happens, right? You have to be prepared for the inevitability that you'll just get shafted by RNG, and the enemy will put you in a spot where you now have to use your healer's skill, you have to use a defensive skill, or maybe you have to dispel the enemy with Paler's skill or whatever. Like there are so many things that can come up, and if you have the option to at least hold on to some SP, you'll be fine. And if you don't have that, you're going to cry, and you're going to lose a lot. So in this very unique case, Bronya is a lesser choice when compared to Asta and Tingyun, but still entirely serviceable. You just have to be like good at the game. That's kind of what it comes down to. You have to both know what you're doing, and you also have to be able to somewhat look ahead to know, can I actually fully utilize the combo this cycle, right?
Like to put that in an actual example, say you're running something like Kafka Serval, then realistically, what are you running? You're probably running something like Pela, and well, you're not running Bailu if you have her, so you're probably running Natasha there, or Japard. But realistically, Natasha, because I would assume more people have Natasha than Japard. Okay, so you say you're SP positive. Well, you don't have a reliable aggro taker on that team, right? So, okay, say you're up against an enemy that can CC you to high hell, or even the chainsaw or machine that can just apply 10 billion stacks of bleed to you and kill you in 2 turns. Well, now you have to use either Natasha's skill or Bronya's skill on someone, whether it's to cleanse or to heal them up. Okay, well, now you're not only messing with speed, you're also messing with potentially your buffs. So that's possibly a turn wasted. And like again, you don't really have too many options in the first place, because you can't run someone like March. You can't run Bailu. You can't run Fire MC. Well, maybe you could. But if you're running Fire MC, you're gonna want to, like, especially alone, you're gonna want to skill with them frequently. For both the shield spam and the damage reduction. But at the same time, that's just too SP hungry.
And it's not really sustainable in like the harder content.
Exactly. Because, well, once again, even if it is sustainable, if you're up against anything with something that you have to cleanse, well, your only option is Bronya. And if you buff someone else that isn't Kafka, you're losing out on a fair bit of damage. So, while it is better to do that and not die, it is still something that you have to consider. So, you have to be very careful with your options. But that does beg the question. Okay, well, what if you wanted to run, or let's say, since support options are fairly dependent, IDP, the KQM classic. What if you were to just run a third DOT character? So say you run Kafka, Sampo, Luka, or Kafka, Sampo, Serval, or etc. As opposed to running 2 DOTs, so Kafka and Sampo, plus a support option, a buffer or a debuffer. What are the trade-offs? What are the benefits? Where should you be considering this? Krim, you've been a little quiet there, buddy. Why don't you take this one?
So I think for that, I'm not really a proponent of the triple dot team. Like it makes sense in some respects. Like you have more dots, that means Kafka can trigger more dots. But I think that the SP issues do somewhat come into play because you either have to slow down how much you can ramp up getting dots on the enemies because Sampo can't spam his skill or else you go negative, and Luka, he's generally SP neutral, so you're really only relying on your healer to generate SP. And so a lot of times I think that it's just better, or you have more flexible team rotations if you're able to just boost Kafka and one other dot, or just have two supports that boost Kafka's dot.
Yeah.
And so I guess the one thing they do provide, they do both have their Vuln debuffs and stuff, so they do provide good support, but I think that just the lack of potential sustain issues and SP kind of limits your stealing performance if you try to force both of them into the same team.
The other thing is probably it's very how do I put it? A bit flimsy. Bit of a flimsy setup in terms of survivability.
Mm-hmm. You have to rely on a sole defensive unit, and what are you gonna use that is SP positive? Jabard Luocha? That's it.
Yeah, it's a tall ask, especially for people that don't have those characters. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's like impossible. I think the way to frame it is that it's not impossible to do it, but you are very much on the clock with that kind of a team where either you kill the enemy or they kill you, and it's gonna go by very fast. So consider what you're against, consider what you like, what the cost could be, because especially like we've talked about with the other things that they provide, and something that we're talking more and more about as time goes on to like really hammer it home. You don't do any damage if you're dead. So, especially like, let's say you're going against the Searing Prowler, right? A lightning weak foe, but that has a very big, very nasty buff with high temperature operation, mania, plus 100 speed on that bad boy, and a hard hitting full team AoE attack as well. And Pela absolutely trivializes that enemy. You could just dispel the buff. It's gone now. Whereas if you were triple dot, you see high temperature operation and you're like, oh no.
As Lucas still does have that in his kit, but generally you're still like in most other situations, maybe you can't dispel the debuff, like Kafka's stacking damage buff. Now over time you're taking more and more damage just from things like that. And so it's rough.
Also, yes, I know Luka can dispel, but I meant in that specific situation because the Searing Prowl actually has an ice weakness, but yeah.
Oh god. Well, it's either that or you just eat a 200 speed enemy or something.
Yeah, it's not really doable, especially because the base speed of enemies in like a late stage mock is already turbo. And adding 100 flat onto that as well is like, you're just not gonna have a good time.
No, even an SU, that guy can kill you if you don't remove it.
So yeah, highest skill option perhaps, but not generally recommended to do triple dot.
Yeah, you are not going to reach the investment where that makes sense, and even if you do you have the SP positive characters? Probably not. Oh yeah. Anyway, that was a very long, very long segue into don't build crit and Bronya is a bait most of the time. Player on the other side because you are never going to have SP the player realistically, unless you have like her Eidolon and Light Cone. So you're probably going to be doing dot plus a buffer, or dot plus a debuffer, or buffer debuffer, but one of those two. Or make a second defensive if you need it. So moving on to the defensive though, as I alluded to earlier, you probably want one of your defensive units to be an ice unit, because freeze has an excellent interaction with dots. So normally dots without Kafka involved before and now have their damage limited to how fast the enemies can act and how consistently you can maintain the dots on them. So she has no trouble maintaining the dots. So their damage is mostly a matter of how fast the enemies act in general. So a higher speed on them and the more actions they take to trigger the dots in the normal way will increase the dot damage. But you can't really change how fast the enemy's speed will increase. You can't change it. You can decrease it pretty reliably, but that's anti-synergy. So what can you do? You don't want to entangle them, you don't want to imprison them, so none of the control effects are good, except for freeze, because of how it works. When you unfreeze, dots will also trigger, but their turn gets skipped, and then their next action gets advanced forward. So you essentially get half of an extra tick every time you freeze. Every 2 freezes, you get 1 extra dot tick that you would not have received otherwise. So, playing Japard in a SP neutral way, or if you can also play him in a more opportunistic way, where you just use his skill when you are flooded on SP, which will likely be after Sampo is fully set up, or Tingyun, what have you, and they're in their generating phase. You might have a spare one to use. You can put some effect hit rates on Japard, and you can roll the dice, and if it hits, you'll get a pretty decent increase in team damage, which he can't realistically do on any other type of team. And from the effect hit rate and resistance changes from the previous patch, the odds are actually not that bad anymore. You can
Mono is talking about bosses and such having their effect res lowered.
Yes, they cap out at 40 now. So unless they have specifically control effect res on top of that, or freeze res specifically, you can pretty realistically hit 100% chance to freeze, or near 100% chance to freeze, if you invest all in EHR on Japard, with the remainder going into defenses. But it's definitely a pretty sizable increase in damage if you can get it. But if you don't have this investment, because honestly, who would at this point? Because EHR Japard would do not much in the previous patches. Then this Japard will probably be paper for a long time, so you will most likely want to run a second defense for in the immediate term. But with the 2-dot versions of Kafka and Japard, it's an interesting option. March will probably never be able to be the sole defensive unit, but she also has the same odds to freeze on her ultimate as E0 Japard.
That is
with guard.
specifying.
Yes.
Sorry to specify. That is at A6.
Yeah,
You need
A6. She has a 65 base chance to freeze with her ultimate. Yep, and I all in EHR. By the way, I forgot to mention this earlier. I mean EHR chest, and you prioritize EHR substats, and they're wearing Bellabog to get reimbursed for their shield strength. You could also technically run Pan-Galactic, but it's I don't think it's worth it. No.
Please don't.
Just run Bellabog. You probably have some pieces lying around.
And if you don't, well, it's a lot less grief to farm Bellabog / Solsato than it is to farm Pan-Galactic.
Oh, yes.
Oh yeah.
Join me in the Jeppy Eidolon Club. Oh, yes. We are all in the Jeppy Eidolon Club. It's actually... both is Light Cone and first Eidolon, I should say, is also extremely sizable. I should mention. Like, you can get really good odds even on freeze resistant enemies if you have both Sig and E1. Like, these are actually incredible Eidolons and effects for EHR Japard. So if you want to play with Kafka, you'll be very happy to have those, in my opinion. But still have to investigate its exact effect on the damage bottom line of Kafka, but it will be pretty good.
I do want to add on to that there is a slight, not necessarily downside. I don't really think it's a downside. You get more damage either way, but it is something that you should be aware of. Is that if you're doing this type of freeze tech, your dots will expire faster because the enemies take a turn to recover from the dot. They don't get to act during that turn, but they do take dot damage, and their next turn is then heavily advanced forward, meaning that they get to act again very quickly. So 2-turn dots in that one interaction will fall off entirely.
Yeah, I kind of glossed over this at the beginning, but this is on condition that you can actually maintain your buffs. So
yeah,
that's a big asterisk on the extremely fast enemies already, in which case perhaps you don't really need the freeze tech in the first place. So there is some decision making. Perhaps double mages don't really need the EHR Japard, and you'd rather just bulk up so you don't get bullshitted on as usual. But you can make that decision for yourself.
Exclamation mark IDP.
Yes.
As always, the IDP just won't die. Okay. That was pretty helpful. I think we can start wrapping it up on Kafka. We haven't really talked about. Well, we mentioned her E1, but we haven't really talked about her other Eidolons as much. So, who wants to go through that? Reens, are you alive?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, we can go through a quick rundown.
Yeah, do you want to take us through her first three?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I guess we can start with her A1 right away. So just overall, her Eidolons early on are relatively solid. It's the mid Eidolons that aren't too impressive. So just as a whole, if you want to look at everything, a good stopping point is generally E2 if you're not going for E6. But going just going Eidolon by Eidolon, right? Her E1 is that whenever you trigger her follow-up attack, she has a chance to increase dot damage received. So this is a vulnerability debuff similar to Sampo's effect on his ultimate. Now, there's a couple of caveats with this Eidolon. It is a good Eidolon, but the caveat is that it increases her effect hit rate pretty significantly, actually. So when we said she was 128% normally, she'll now be up to 159% in order to get this reliably up. And you do want this reliably up because it is a rather big bonus. But it's something you need to keep in mind when you're gearing her.
EHR requirement, mind you.
Yes. For her E2, pretty just good buff overall. All ally dot damage increased by 25%. Solid becomes more valuable if you're running the triple dot team, obviously, compared to 2 or the Kafka solo team. But overall, solid for its value, and this is kind of the stopping point, I would say, if you're looking at Eidolons in terms of just value per just character strength per value, right? For E3, E3 is essentially worthless. It's not going to really do much. The same can generally be said with her E5. She actually does not benefit much from level on her talents. It's on her traces, I mean. It's one of those cases, like we said, because her damage is based off of ally damage and dot damage, the base multipliers are not as relevant. And although you look at it and you think, oh cool, the percentage goes up, but it's small. It's not really worth it. So ultimately, when you're looking at E3, E4, E5, they're just stepping stones. They're stepping stones to E6. So if you're not wailing out here, they're not really even worth looking at. Now, I mean, E6 is the big boy. It's the big boy Eidolon here. It is a big boost to the multiplier. It's 156%. So it's the bear in mind the extension on the shock is not as relevant. It looks nice, but functionally she has no issue keeping shock up to begin with. So it doesn't really have much effect there. It might save you one turn occasionally, but just the 156% doing that much extra damage is huge. Overall, like I said, it's just early Eidolons. It's not nothing like, you're not really looking at E3, E4, E5. E4 can have some value. This actually this does let her do 2-turn rotations, two skill essentially rotations. But this is dependent on there being at least 4 enemies in order to do that. If you're in a battle that has 3 enemies, it's not going to be able to hit the breakpoint on its own. So again, situational. Can be a big increase, but won't always be.
Okay, I feel like you covered that pretty well. Krim, is there anything else you want to add about her Eidolons?
Feel. I know how
yeah,
it feels when I
I
steal your
guess-
Kafka.
Yeah, I guess like her E4, there's been talk about like with her light cone and ER rope you can get 2-turn ultimate, but generally it's really not worth it. The difference in damage from lowering her by the 43% attack, it kind of almost cancels out, so you really don't gain much from that. So you just kind of take it as a little bonus that in like heavy AoE you might get to do your ult a little bit faster.
Hmm.
Okay, that's fair. I don't think there's much else to talk about. Um, let's talk about pull value for a second. We don't usually talk about pull value. So let's do that for Kafka for a change. What do we think? I'm gonna need your opinions one by one. Let's start with Sushou.
So, I am. I'm a big fan of pulling for characters that you like. Okay, like that is my disclaimer. If you like a character and you want to pull for them, do not let anybody dissuade you. But for me personally, just me, I can't help but also look at the performance that a unit has, that a unit brings to the table. Because it'll just make me sad if I like a character and they're not very good. Thankfully, I don't have to worry about this with Kafka because she is very good. The preface is that generally pulling for damage dealers, like dedicated damage dealers, is going to usually be less valuable than pulling for support units that can be flexed in many different places. So, well, you know, units that do a unique thing typically have good pull value. Just so happens that Kafka does have a unique thing that does make her valuable. To me, she is the dot team. Even if a character comes out in future, which for whatever ungodly reason has a stronger dot than Kafka does, well, guess what? You put them together, and now Kafka's still the main damage dealer because she procs the dots. So she seems like she's gonna have a very good time, even moving forward. And I think the really biggest thing for me is that her damage is consistent. I really value consistency. The fact that dots always do a consistent level of damage. She's not crit reliant. If you have a setup for her, she's going to perform the same way pretty much every time, outside of like enemy shenanigans, let's say. I think that's incredible because, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have also had it where it's like, oh, please crit, please crit, please crit, no, and then your run is just doomed. Kafka doesn't have that. You won't experience that problem if you have actually invested into her and her teams. So
Literally silly moment where you're just praying for her to crit so you can get the resurgence proc.
Yeah. And
Yep,
the more that we've like experimented with Kafka, the more that we've found out, the more we've learned that she is actually very flexible in terms of teammates, to the point where Hyper Kafka, quote unquote, is absolutely doable. Just like turbo buff Kafka, and she'll do the rest. She's really good. Don't build crit on Kafka.
Do not crit. Look at the bottom of the screen. Read that. Now read it again. Memorize it. Breathe it. Become it. I don't want to see crit Kafkas, guys.
Oh god, yeah.
Um,
I'll do my addendum if you're finished the show, but I'd mostly just like to add that although as the SP user of the team, her use case for a team is limited because your account has a maximum of 2 of those slots. I do feel her design space as a dot payoff unit, a universal dot payoff unit, is something that makes her a unique game piece that I don't think we are going to get another of for a very long time, if ever. So I'll be going into this more with Luka, but being able to leverage any kind of break dot at all leads to a lot of potential for her universal detonation ability to drastically increase team damage through dot stacking. And Kafka being any kind of stacking is much, much different than Sampo, who does wind shear detonation specifically at E4, or Luka, who does bleed detonation. The thing is, with those characters, Sampo doesn't have anyone else besides Kafka who really cares about wind shear at all. And Luka now makes certain other characters consider break effect in a different way than before. And Kafka just ties all of them together and makes you consider break effect in general and dots specifically completely differently than before, where it was just some extra damage that in previous patches didn't even scale with most things, but now they do. And it's a legitimate archetype, so I think there's much broader considerations that we will have to explore in the near future regarding dots in general. And I don't think we're done with Kafka, even though we figured out what her best teams are. I think a lot of characters will be different starting from this patch.
I think
1.2
that's,
really hits different, huh?
All of the
yeah.
patches hit differently. We could do a whole podcast about like how crazy broad the changes are patch to patch for this game is. Each patch is honestly just insane.
I feel like the game is just getting crazier. Like 1.0 was relatively stable. We got Sele. Her mechanic's nice, Resurgence is nice, but like it's, you know, like it's not crazy. It has its caveats, and depending on the team, it can really feel like you're just not doing anything. But it's not bad. And then we have Jing Yuan, who has an entire thing going on around him right now, which we'll talk about in a minute. We can definitely talk about that. But they were fairly ordinary in terms of like what they do, right? He's AoE, she's single target, end of story. And then we got into 1.1 where we started seeing the crazy. We first got Silverwolf, and you know, she's just nuts. Like the conception that people had around her at the time was just mono teams. You know, you get her and you just run mono teams, but that's not really how things ended up being. Her weakness implant, yeah, her weakness implant actually makes her more versatile rather than allowing for mono teams. And then Luocha, who is just like, what can we even say about Luocha that we haven't already said? This guy just does it all. He's your abundance unit. He's the gold standard for abundance. If you could get any abundance unit, nay, any defensive unit in the game, this is the guy. This is who you want to pick. Him and his weird, sussy coffin and his auto-apocalypse face. You don't want to trust this guy, but you do want to trust this guy. And then this patch, we got Blade, who has a somewhat similar playstyle to Arlon, but at the same time not. And Kafka, who also has a fairly similar playstyle to some other units, but is also quite different.
I'd say substantially, but
Mm.
yes.
So we can actually go and talk about Kafka compared to some of her other role contenders.
Actually, I want to quickly hear about pull value from Krim as the
Resident
Oh, yeah.
E6 S5er. Krim,
Tell us about all
Yeah.
7 of those Kafkas.
Krim?
least biased take incoming.
yeah, Krim.
Yeah.
We definitely want to hear the least biased take of all time.
Yeah, well, so I'm pretty much in agreement with what everybody else has said so far. I think that just the ability for you to use a lot of the gear that with the other DPS and things you were building, you kind of just had to throw away. That makes her teams make your resin or trailblazer power efficiency go up a lot, and she just opens up opportunities for a lot of future characters. Like anything related to dots, you're just gonna want Kafka there, and it dramatically increases their efficacy. Even the characters that can proc their own dots, like Sampo and Luka, because now they're proccing their own, and you get the bonus from hers. And then the Eidolons, like even if over time you just want to make Kafka as strong as possible, like her E6 feels just insanely strong. Even having played with Sail like for weeks, it feels like you've like achieved a new level of power. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you're essentially doubling her multiplier on her ultimate. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
Which
because
is
with their
weird.
light cone and that, you're adding another 200+% to her multiplier, and that scales crazy well with any other buffs you add to it. It's nuts.
So she
1.2 good.
Mm. So we did say this earlier, but Kafka really likes the investment.
Yeah, I think that's probably. I think in terms of like actual tangible downsides for like that are universally felt, you need to take her to level 80. This is non-negotiable. Her teammates also need to be extremely well invested too. Like if you're pairing her with dot characters like Sampo, Luka, Serval to an extent, they need to be
Invested.
super invested. They also need to be level 80. They need to have like giga relics, because Kafka's a portion, a non-negligible portion of Kafka's damage will be coming from them. So the more damage they deal, the more damage Kafka will deal. For Hypercarry, for Hyper Kafka, your typical harmony supports, so Ask the Tingyun, for example, and your debuffers, such as Silverwolf and Pela, do not need as much investment as Sampo and Luka would in the same situations, but you still want them to be relatively well invested, because their buffs, after all, are the thing that are going to affect Kafka's damage like quite significantly as well. And so if you're, if it's like, oh yeah, I heard Asta's really good with Kafka, and your Asta's like level 60 with like a level 2 ultimate, it's kind of troll a bit, isn't it? So
Yeah.
And
It-
just
it-
beyond that, like, you want to invest in them so they don't die. Like,
Yes. Even the hypercarry supports, you will still want to invest defensively, like HP percent, defense percent, and also, as we said earlier, with the ice defensive units, even they need extremely high investment because they want the like even more of the exact same high value stats Kafka does, speed and EHR. So it's just it has a lot of room to scale, just because everyone wants investment.
yeah.
Everyone.
So by no means is she a cheap character to even just start using. But I think that her payoff is one of the highest we've seen so far.
Oh yeah.
she's simple to build, she's not easy to build.
You have a clear path laid out for you, one way or another, through Hyper or Dot, and it's very obvious what you need. It's just see you next year when you actually finish all of this to a reasonable degree.
Indeed. Yeah, let's wrap it up here. We talked about Serval a fair bit. I don't think there's anything else that we need to talk about her. Let's talk about the lion in the room. Mr. Jing Yuan. If you guys have been paying attention, you'll have noticed the general direction of the discourse around Jing Yuan lately over the last week or two. Well, longer than that, though it has been picking up a lot of steam lately. And if you haven't been paying attention, the TLDR is a lot of people are starting to come to terms with Jing Yuan's less than appealing points, his cons. And by cons, I mean like cons, not constellations, guys. We're not talking about Eidolons. So some of them, let's go through some of them. Jing Yuan is incredibly backloaded. I don't think anyone can really argue against that. A lot of his damage comes from his Lightning Lord, and his Lightning Lord is really, really slow. He's just 60 base speed, and you know, Lightning Lord is generally going to be the last action in a turn, which ends up feeling really bad in later stages of Mach in particular, because enemies have such high speeds. The other problem with that is because of how much damage is put into Lightning Lord, his own base numbers aren't particularly high. Like, his skill is 100% of his attack to all enemies, which is pretty much just the modifier on a basic attack at level 6. And then his ultimate is 200% of his attack, which is not terrible, but it's not great. Now, then you run into certain gameplay issues which can't really be fixed without changes to his kit directly. The way it works is, if Jing Yuan gets CC'd, your Lightning Lord's not going to act until the turn, at the end of the turn at which he gets un-CC'd. So if you get imprisoned, if you get frozen, that could be potentially a turn or more that ends up going completely down the drain, because well, that's how they decided to code him for some reason. And then the other problem is, because you're hard capped at 10 stacks, any stacks you get beyond that point just go into the void. You can't really do anything about them. You can't gain them back the next turn. You can't overstack. It's just a pretty hot mess. And a lot of people have been starting to come to terms with that. But a lot of people have also been what we call doom posting him. And that takes form in just an abundance of people shitting on him on various platforms. You'll have seen the content creators by now, the Reddit posts. Um, so yeah, what do we think about Jing Yuan, and particularly the discourse around him?
Okay, I think people directly comparing him to Kafka is just insane to me because I've already explained how she's a unique game piece who's trying to do something different, even though she can be played in a way that is similar to, hyper teams. But in my opinion, the flaws with Jingwan have more to do with that are more situational, and also have to do with his implementation. So the big deal from his changes to CBDT2, where he was considered extraordinarily powerful, had to do with how Lightning Lord worked. Whereas now you have to actually have the buff on him as Lightning Lord falls. Any buff of choice. Or it just will not apply at all. You couldn't do anything fancy. It's very inflexible. So in the previous case with if he gets CC'd, you're not going to see Lightning Lord this Eon problem. Even if he's not the one who gets CC'd, but your supports do, or your defensive unit do, there's still pretty bad consequences. So if you need to time your Tingyun E very specifically to land on the Lightning Lord turn, if she gets CC'd there, you're not going to have Tingyun's buffs.
This is like the ultimate form of speed and action tuning.
Yes, if you want Jingyuan's Lightning Lord to be buffed, you have to go to extraordinary levels of speed tuning and planning, which I don't think many people are willing to do, or even go through the trouble of doing, which is probably also a big factor in people not rating his performance very highly. His numbers on paper are reasonable. It's just reality does not always reflect paper.
Reality is often disappointing.
Yes, in this case, literally. But in general, I think this mock is just extraordinarily unfavorable to him for our two very big mentally breakdown-inducing reasons at the top of mock. So I think the discourse is just very slightly unfair, even though the reasons they have for criticizing him may be true.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. I think another thing that people tend to do is compare him to Serval. And, well, I'm personally more in the Serval camp for some of the already mentioned reasons. I don't think... I don't know how to put this. What do you think, Sushou?
Well, it's kind of the same thing as what Mono said in regards to comparisons against Kafka. I think that it is largely kind of disingenuous, the ways in which people are comparing the two characters. And it's also kind of like when people say, "Oh, Serval is better than Jing Yuan," they're not talking about numbers, because numbers-wise, Jing Yuan is actually like up there. It's what's been discussed already. It's the ease of access to his actual numbers, to the the damage that he could otherwise be doing. But it's hard. His kit is very restrictive now, especially because one of his previous best, like unquestionable best teammates, Bronya, loses so much value on him because her skill damage percent buff is literally never going to be affecting Lightning Lord, and that means that his flexibility is automatically reduced. It's like, and again, it feels bad to use Bronya with Jing Yuan, because it's like you're just here for the turn advance pretty much. Because a big problem that Jing Yuan does end up having is he's too slow for Lightning Lord. I know we said, oh yeah, Lightning Lord has a base speed of 60. That's true, but it also racks up speed pretty quickly, and your Jing Yuan needs to be like Lightning McQueen to be able to get beyond 6 stacks before Lightning Lord's beyond Lightning Lord's turn, and that's really hard. That is I would say that is an unreasonable amount of speed to have on just Jing Yuan himself.
It's like 140 to get 7 stacks, isn't it?
That's if you have ultimate. So it also ends. He also is very ultimate reliant because of how difficult it is to get the absurd speed values that he needs, and that in turn makes him very reliant on either Bronya or Tingyan, which makes him a very expensive character, and you can see how it starts to spiral very quickly. Compared to Serval, where it's you use skill, apply dot, and that is your gameplay plan. You're done. Yep. Even if you're doing less damage, it's the fact that you're quite a bit less damage. Like, I don't want to downplay Jing Yuan's damage. He does deal damage. People that are saying that he doesn't deal damage, it's not just disingenuous, it's just factually wrong at that point. But Serval is consistent. And as I mentioned a little earlier, I love consistency. Being able to just have the damage, like the extra damage afforded to you by Serval's talent on everything that you do once an enemy is shocked, makes her, in my eyes, invaluable. Plus, being a 4-star, you're going to get Eidolons for her. Her Eidolons are really good. They really help like the ramp-up portion of her like game loop get started way faster, and maintaining it also becomes a lot easier. And at that point, it's like, well, why not just use the unit that everybody has, right? Surely. Yeah. Oh, and another thing,
in a really SP positive way, no? You can just
yeah. Her skill isn't like hugely stronger than her basic attack, so as long as an enemy is shocked, her basic attack is popping.
Oh yeah, compared to most.
And as well, to piggyback off of another point that you made, Mono, about this mock in particular, the double decaying shadow. If you're I think this is the thing that like is my personal nail in the coffin for Jing Yuan. Again, I think he's fine, but like this to me is like too much. If Jing Yuan is CC'd, Lightning Lord is like, didn't see anything, and it just does nothing. Frozen, entangled, imprisoned, doesn't matter. If any of those, or like, yeah, if you have any of those on Jing Yuan, when it comes time for Lightning Lord to act, Lightning Lord is just like, give me an order, Lamau.
It's so weird because they made Lightning Lord its own unique entity. It's essentially a summon rather than a real follow-up, even though it's it's classified as a follow-up.
Mm.
But at the same time, they still made it very tied to Jing Yuan, which I think is just it's really weird. It's just introducing problems for no real reason other than just designer aesthetic, I guess.
Mm.
Yeah,
If
Macho, we've
if
already talked about Eidolons specifically for Serval.
hmm
But yeah, let me guess. You were gonna say something along the lines of if you could get Lightning Lord to act on command, or if Lightning Lord could act regardless of Jing Yuan's condition.
Yeah, that literally, yep, that is pretty much word for word what I was gonna say. If Lightning Lord could act regardless of what state Jing Yuan is in, that would automatically be a significant improvement to him, and would actually give him a reason to be used over the units that he is frequently compared against.
Mhm.
Because it's like, oh no, Jing Yuan is CC'd. Whatever will I do? The character where it's like 70% of his total damage output comes from his talent.
Mm.
It would actually be good. But
Obviously,
I don't think it would be enough. That's the issue. Is that it would be a start.
Well, I
yeah.
think another issue is that you can't control which target Lightning Lord focuses, and so since it's like a cleave, it only does full damage on the main one. So sometimes it will choose the edge enemy, and you miss out on a hit, or it doesn't choose the like an elite enemy that you want to focus your damage on, which can also kind of reduce his effectiveness.
Mhm.
Yeah, his AoE scaling is inherently limited.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's very weird how they decided to go around to go out with Lightning Lord. It's like I think a few things like just small changes could make Genuine and Lightning Lord feel a lot better. Like you said, Sushou, if Lightning Lord could act irregardless of Genuine's condition, well, obviously aside from the condition of dead, because I think we can all agree Lightning Lord should not act if Genuine is dead. But if Lightning Lord could actually be its own entity on the field, if you could somehow force Lightning Lord to act, say you hit 10 stacks and then Lightning Lord is immediately advanced forward, just goes off.
Mm.
I think that could also help. And then if Lightning Lord, if you could make Lightning Lord prioritize the primary target of your skill, since it's but how would that work? I mean, I guess I guess maybe like have a marker when you're casting skill. Sort of like when you have like blast and then you choose who the center target is and the adjacent targets. If you could somehow do that, like mark a specific target that you'd want to prioritize. Um, I think those are I think that's pretty much like just all you need to make Lightning Lord and Jingyuan just feel really good. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's just like he has the potential there. It's just kind of people prefer to play something you can pick up and effectively use without much issue. And so, like, it's just frustrating to try and overcome those issues. And I think that's really where a lot of the discourse and hate against him is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think there's much more to add here.
Hmm.
Yeah, not really. It's just like, yeah, he has flaws. People don't want to build around them. So
Yeah.
And, like,
The-
come on, guys, realistically, like, everyone, like, literally just every single unit in the game has flaws, right? Like, it's hard to say. I mean, like, Yanqing, you know, you have to shield him. If he gets hit, he loses a pretty big portion of damage. Seela, if you can't get Resurgence, she's just a regular hunt character. She loses her unique identity. Welt, I mean, I think Welt's great, but it feels really bad when you can't get the skill bounces on the target you're prioritizing.
well,
Silver
except
Wolf.
Luocha. Oh no. Okay, Luocha. There is actually one
Yeah.
thing. If you have CC literally every single turn, sometimes by multiple people, the automatic skill isn't enough.
Mm. And
Straight up.
Luocha is still we've said this before, and I think people misunderstood what we meant. Luocha does not have on-demand emergency button healing like our other units, our other abundance units do. Yeah, exactly. And he can prevent one shot. So if you get just ass blasted by a particularly heavy attack, Luocha's not gonna save you from that. If your HP drops below 1, he can't do shit about that. The man can work miracles, but if you're already dead, he can't bring you back. I'm sorry. That's just not happening. So while he is fantastic, and again, he's the gold standard for healers at the moment. He is not without his flaws.
Yeah, he can't deal with particularly extreme situations, but in the vast majority of situations, he will do amazingly. So
Yeah,
that's
and
why.
go on.
Go on.
Um,
Well,
Canadian moment.
yes.
when we're overly polite.
Oh yeah.
Is there anything you want to add, Mono?
Not really.
Okay. I was gonna say, like, the thing that people misconstrue a lot is when we say he tends to struggle in AoE heavy content. What we mean to say is that he struggles against content that does heavy AoE damage, not content that is specifically like abundant in AoE. So you know, if you're up against a couple of elites and they do multiple target hits every single time they do anything, Luocha's gonna struggle. It's a fact. You can only cast your skill once, and you do have 2 casts of your passive healing. While it is great, you know, it is still something that you have to keep in mind when dealing with him. Because at that point, well, maybe you might want to bring a shield, like Japard. Maybe you'll want to bring Fire MC for whatever mitigation you can go for. Maybe even like a super invested Natasha or Bailu might just be better in a situation like that. So every unit has, like, going off this tangent, every unit has their flaws. And at the end of the day, guys, this is a gacha game. They're going to want to incentivize you to buy their products. They're going to want you to pull different units. And honestly, I'm gonna say it, they have been pretty generous with the options that they've given us so far. There aren't many units that are that crazy pull value. Realistically, honestly, like Silver Wolf and Luocha, Luocha more so. But other than that, like, you can get by without having to pull most of these units. The standard units are pretty good. The starter units are pretty good. Qingchue, fantastic DPS option, especially if you didn't get Seele. Even if you did get Seele. Dan Hung, people are still sleeping on him, unfortunately. Herta and Himiko, guys, I might be personally biased here, but I leveled them up and they feel pretty good. Like, they're not amazing, they're not meant to be, but for the purposes that you bring them for, they're pretty excellent choices. And they're some of the lesser popular units.
They're just narrow. Is their big flaw in my opinion?
They're very specific in what they want to do, but they do it pretty well, I think. You know, we've been talking about Kafka and Serval and Jing Yuan all day, and like realistically, you don't need to pull either Kafka or Jing Yuan. You can, obviously, if you like them, and you should pull them if you like them. But if you just want a lightning unit, everyone's gonna get a Serval, and she's plenty good. Especially because, you know, like Sushou said, you can get Eidolons for her, and they're just gonna make her exceptionally better. So just to sum it up, like the discourse around Jing Yuan, while there are some points that are being made that are valid and good points to be made, a lot of it is coming from just it's disingenuous, and it's coming from a misunderstanding of what you're supposed to be looking for. We can get more into that later. This is supposed to be a Kafka Luka podcast. So
I guess the TLDR for Jing Yuan versus Kafka thing is that the Doom posting is excessive. It's like they're fundamentally different. Yes, you can compare like directly their damage, but it's not the same. There's a lot more stuff in play. It depends. And a lot of the people that are like categorically just blasting Jing Yuan for like no discernible reason, because that like it's just kind of funny. You just kind of have to laugh and move on after a certain point, especially because a lot of the people that are perpetuating the whole Jing Yuan is terrible nonsense is like they don't even own the character, so like it just seems kind of pathetic in a sense. Let people like what they like, goddammit.
Yeah, exactly. Like at the end of the day, guys, it's a video game. You're meant to have fun. So, it is fair to criticize a character for their faults. It's not okay to criticize people for liking certain characters. Okay, like it doesn't affect you. Why do you care? Just go and have fun. Play whatever you want. You can say Jing Yuan struggles with X, Y, and Z, and that's perfectly fine. But if you go and call someone an idiot for wanting Jing Yuan or having Jing Yuan, then I think you're the actual idiot here. But yeah, I mean, enough rambling about Jing Yuan. Let's ramble about over our latest Persona 5 yoinked character, Vi from Arcane. Let's talk about Luka.
How many people talking about him? And
Yeah.
honestly, he's a lot more interesting than people are giving him credit for.
Yeah, Krim, why don't you take us through his basics, what he does, what his abilities do?
All right, so his kit's pretty interesting. It basically relies on, so you use his skill to apply a bleed that lasts 3 turns, and it scales off enemy max HP, but generally that only comes into play when you encounter mobs because their max HP is lower, so you won't hit that cap, but generally you're just going to hit the attack cap for his skill, which at talent 12 is like 370%. And then his ultimate applies a vulnerability debuff, and It increases their damage taken by like 20%. And so with that, you use his, or wait, let me see. He gets an enhanced basic attack after you gain fighting will stacks, which his skill gives 1 stack and his ultimate gives him 2. And so his basic attack will do 3 hits and trigger an uppercut that will proc any bleed that's on the enemy. And so that works with both his skill bleed, and it will proc any break bleeds that are also on the enemy. And so that can be up to around 88% of the original damage, which is quite good. And so his general gameplay kind of revolves around you maintaining bleed on the target, building up those fighting will stacks, and then using enhanced basic to trigger the bleeds. His traces, his A2 has dispel whenever you use his skill, which can be useful if any enemy has like a debuff or whatever. And since a lot of bosses often have those, it kind of makes him useful there. And since those are generally the targets he's going to focus, whenever you gain a fighting will stack, he generates 3 energy, which it doesn't have many significant increases to like his break points, but it's still useful just to get say if you get hit energy or whatever from enemies. Sometimes it might give you an earlier turn to use either his ult or whatever.
It's very, very close to getting to a break point. You just need just a little something extra to push it over the edge for 4-turn rotations. We'll get into that later.
And then whenever you use his enhanced basic, his A6 has a 50% chance to do an additional proc. And so generally it doesn't really have much use initially, but it does pair extremely well with his E6 that for each proc, it also triggers a percentage of the bleed. So it gets quite good if you invest later into him for his Eidolons. And so I think that's pretty much the gist of everything he does.
Want to get into his Eidolons since they are pretty important, I think.
Yeah. So his E1 is a pretty decent damage boost. Just whenever he takes action, if he has bleed on the enemy, it increases his damage for 2 turns. His E2 is probably the most interesting one for me. Since it increases the number of fighting will stacks you get by 1 on his skill whenever you hit an enemy. So now you generally don't even have to deal with unenhanced basic attacks. You can just alternate your skill and basic and always be triggering the bleeds. His E4, for each fighting will stack you have, it increases his attack by 5%. So just another decent damage increase. And then his E6, after you use his enhanced basics rising uppercut, it procs an additional bleed equal to 8% for every hit of his direct punch. And so essentially that can add up to another 48% of dot damage on top of his talent that already procs. So it adds up to quite a lot of damage, especially if he has break bleed on an enemy or like a boss. It's nuts.
Yes. It's the real juicy part of his kit, and we're going to be going into a lot of detail about this because I don't think people are talking about how you can leverage these abilities. This changes a lot of how you build Fizz in general. Because he is a bleed payoff unit. And you could get some big bleeds before this patch. But they didn't. They had less usable buffs. And there wasn't a payoff until just now. So, we'll get into the meat of that.
Okay, but
But-
before that, I think we need to get into his builds. So,
Yes.
who wants to take over for his relics? Mono, do you want to do his relics?
So that, I guess it really depends on what you end up doing with him. If you want to build him for like personal damage, and you aren't leaning into using him as a break damage holder, then you honestly want to build him in a very similar way to Kafka. The usual all you need is patience. What was it called? Good night, sleep well. And I believe the free to play option is Wolf Walk Time.
Wolf Walk Time's Destruction.
Oh wait, no, never mind. Not that one.
Fermata
Is
is
Fermata also-
Annihility.
Oh yes.
Fermata is
Is that-
the, yeah, it's bleed, no, it's shock and wind shear.
Never mind. Not that one. Where's the reference? Jesus Christ. Like we don't even have the reference for that. That's how bad it is. We haven't even
Here,
started
I'll
with
pull up
guide.
the Nihility icons. So there aren't any light cones that are like specifically focused on like bleed that are Nihility.
Yeah.
So if you go for Mata, it's gonna be for the break effect. If you're building him for to be the
Yeah.
physical breaker. Alternatively, I think maybe you can. I think honestly, like resolution, I think like superimposes just pretty good on any Nihility in it.
Yeah.
Well, unless like they have like a sizable amount of like personal damage. That
It's
requires.
not really great for like carry Luka if you want to do that, but if you're
Yeah.
just including him as like a break holder,
Mm,
why not?
yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
make him do something that's relevant.
Welts is probably fine.
Yeah, as a stat stick once
Stat
again.
stick helps with the skill if you're using it a fair amount of times inside of like a fight. You know, you're probably going to have debuffs on the enemies, so you know you're going to increase your damage to them.
Yeah.
If you have
Hang
it,
on,
it's an option.
Let me
Um,
see. What's his EHR breakpoint?
Should be standard, no? It's
It should be
100% base chance, isn't it?
67,
Oh yeah, it's
right?
just 100, so it's the same as
A wild Sushou has appeared.
yes. So it would be
Like 67%.
yeah, 67 EHR requirement. So he is definitely a EHR chest user.
Actually, wait. Quick interruption. Fermata might be an option on him depending on his teammates, right? Because it increases
Yes.
damage if they're afflicted by shock or wind shear, not shock or wind shear's damage itself.
It's
Right?
particularly good for like break in general. It's very context dependent, but it's not a stable best free to play option.
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
And you know, there's Eyes of the Prey, affected trait, DOT damage, pretty decent if you have it. Generally, like any of like your standard damage dealing nihility options are gonna be good on him. Do not put tutorial on him. Just, I mean, like
Please, no.
if you're putting tutorial on him because you need the effective trait, I think you need to go back to relic farming.
Yes. Oh my god. Please.
Um.
Oh,
So
God.
yeah, patience in the name of the world. Good night, sleep well. Eyes of the prey. Fermata situationally, resolution situationally, all good. Use whatever you've got.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
would
so-
say, unless you have like higher superimpositions of resolution, maybe don't use that.
Yeah, you probably want to put it on like a defense down unit, since those are also now really good with him.
Yeah. And yeah, like if it's like S3 plus, maybe go for it. But if it's anything lower than that, just
On
don't.
break effect, it's probably fine.
Yeah.
And then
Fermata's break
stats.
effect.
Yeah. And then
Let's talk about
stats.
relics first because we skipped over that.
Oh. Yeah, relics. You want to do EHR chest, as we said. You want to
Like
to
actual sets, not stats.
oh, sets.
Yeah.
All right. Again, there's no dedicated dot set, so realistically, it's going to be either the fizz set, or if you have the right conditions, you can do genius as the best set. Once again, this, and you can cope with two piece, fizz or wild wheat or messenger, some combination. It's probably not going to stay this way unless they release a new dot set. So will probably be a holdover, but you'll probably be fine with the fizz set champions, streetwise boxing.
Yeah, someone did ask about the 4-piece. I think it's probably fine. You might have to wait a while to hit the 5 stacks, but other than that, should be fine.
Yeah,
He's a deity
it's
unit, so attack is pretty good for him.
yeah, as long as the set bonuses are actually being used, a lot of the relic sets are pretty close to each other, so substats are king, as usual. So
Do you
it's hard to
think
go
there will
wrong.
be a place for break set, since the break effect can help with the bleed and maybe the extra energy, or do you think it's
Yes.
not worth?
Yes, actually. I think that Thief could definitely be interesting for him. The energy on break can actually, in combination with his A4, let him do 4 turn rotations, which is huge because it lets him consistently climb with his stacks using his ult and E2 in combination. So that will make him a lot more flexible, and you can cash in those extra stacks that you get from building up that energy faster to get free SP, because the excess stacks can just be cashed in for normal you wouldn't otherwise do over the long term, which is very helpful. But the break build is somewhat different. I would consider it a different playstyle than the other one with the scary Luka, or rather, I should say sub DPS Luka, or extra carry. He doesn't compete with the SP guzzling carries like Seele or even Kafka. He is played in a largely SP neutral playstyle, so scary Luka? Oh no. Okay. But yeah, break stacking will probably want to go thief. It's very, very good, both effects on the set. But that's it for relics. For stats, you will want a similar deal to Kafka, to be honest with you. You want speed or attack boots. Attack boots are more arguable for Luka because his bleed is capped based on his attack percent. So you want that to be maximized for the bosses you want to bring him in because they will cap his bleed easily late game. So you want that to be stacked. And then you want the EHR chest. This is for carry, Luka, I will clarify also. And then the rope, you want attack percent, and for the orb, you do want physical damage percent. So, fairly standard build. For break effect, you just want to replace the rope with a break rope. And we'll also have different stat priorities, which I'll get to in a second. For stat priorities, you want speed and attack percent are top priority after you reach your EHR goal of 67%. As a reminder, that applies to both builds. And after that, it's just like some break effect is fine if you aren't using a dedicated breaker. And just utterly worthless if you are using another dedicated breaker besides him. And crit is nice to get afterwards if you're building him carry. I think it's unlikely you'll be able to prioritize crit on him, so it could be that it's just similar to Kafka, don't build crit.
Yeah,
Math
I'd probably
is still-
say don't build crit. Sorry to
Yeah,
interject.
yeah.
Please continue.
That's, you could replace the text, honestly. It's
Oh
fine,
god.
but
Oh
yeah,
god.
just make the bleed as fat as possible, especially if you're going to stack them, because
We
it's
are KQM has become anti-crit, guys. It's doomed.
well for dot pilled, based and dot pilled. But yeah, it's honestly very similar to Kafka, so except the break build on him is more interesting. You would you change the substat priority to be like above attack percent and speed, where your primary investment goal is break percent after you hit break effect after you hit the EHR goal, and then you prioritize attack percent and speed. Just a very slight difference along with the rope. This is fairly bog standard for break percent payoff units. And is that it for his build?
I think so. We covered
Yeah, that's
build
it.
and stat priority.
Mhm.
Okay. I think we can go over the last couple of topics fairly quickly.
Yeah. This
We
team-
have been going at this for a while. I think it's
Almost
time
3
to
hours.
wrap it up. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's okay. So you've been talking about him being a break effect, or well, a good breaker for a little bit now. But I think it's kind of safe to say that physical, at the very least at the current moment, is just the most consistent breakers.
Mm-hmm.
You have Luka, who's just great at breaking. You have Sushou, who is great at breaking, especially with her E1. Like, E1 alt E1 combo is pretty scary.
I'd say Luka's just as good.
Oh yeah,
at
no,
breaking.
that's that's not the point. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
Clara, also.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're pairing her with Tingyun, well, your ults are gonna go burr.
Oh yeah.
And, like, physical Trailblazer is no slouch either when it comes to breaking. I feel like they're a little bit slept on. So, okay, so when, like, are there any advantages to having Luka over other breakers, and just other breakers over Luka in particular?
Okay, so the thing with the fizz break is, like, in a vacuum, against the high level bosses, with a single target focus, which you would consider playing fizz breakers in general, it's going to be the best break effect, aside from a 5-stack entangle, or arguably 4-stack entangle could compete with it, in addition to the delaying utility, because its base damage is like 6x the default break effect value times the toughness multiplier. So that's just absolutely insane for a break effect if it's capped out. Of course, that's I just referred to the cap. So against smaller enemies, it will be less impressive overall. So do keep that in mind. But at its peak, I would consider Fizz Break the most promising of the bunch.
Especially
And,
because he doesn't use as much SP as his competition, I think.
Oh yes.
I think that's a really, really big, like coupled with his bleed detonation that he has as well. It means that while he might not have as much upfront damage as, let's say, Sushou, but we can get into that later, he uses a lot less SP. And because you're incentivized to use his enhanced basic attacks, which, thankfully, recover SP, making him really good at being just kind of slotted in places where you would never slot in one of the other physical breakers.
He is in the sub DPS space. He has almost no competition. Like, actually, I think he has none, because everyone else guzzles SP or is a healer. So Sushou, I mean, with E1, you could argue she could be a sub DPS, but that's highly situational.
I think Sushou being a sub DPS, or rather just I think that would only really be in, like, fizz focused games. So if you're running, like, I don't know, like physical Trailblazer, Clara, Sushou, that kind of thing, where you can just, like, have the weakness break consistently. Or with exceptionally good breakers. Someone, like, anyone with a bounce. Wait, is Sushou uses Ayaka's voice line?
Eh?
Wait, I just got stun locked. Wait, I thought Sushou was... Wait. It is! Wait, Sushou is using, the beginning of Ayaka's voice line. She's just butchering it.
Oh. Interesting.
Look, reading is hard. She knows this.
True.
We know this.
I mean, she summons a giant chicken. I don't think she's very good at doing a lot of things.
Au contraire, my friend, I would say that makes it all the more appealing.
Okay. Let's get back on track. I got stun locked for a second. I heard the voice line and I immediately went back to 2.x era with Ayaka just saying 17 sentences in the span of 3 seconds again and again and again. I have PTSD, guys. I have PTSD, okay?
Oh my god.
But yeah, sorry for the interruption. Let's go back. Let's run it back.
Yeah, I got ganked by a phone call while you were doing that, actually, but anyway, I think Sushou is still conditional based on Fizz Week for her to realistically have the SP footprint anywhere close to neutral, so I still don't really think she steps on his toes. And in fact, I think together they are actually more interesting. I'll get into that later, but to be clear, Luka has no competition right now. He's also a currently unique game piece.
Yeah, that's fair. He definitely feels like a unique game piece. His skill counter is, or his enhanced basic counter is pretty interesting. You know, some people may refer to his light cone art. Definitely not me. I don't know what you're on about. And yeah, honestly, they're really expanding on the ideas that people have had for paths since we started the game. People like, this is another thing. People look at paths very linearly, like, oh, okay, well, an agility character is just going to apply debuffs. Oh, okay, but what if they also dealt a lot of damage? What if they made the enemy fall down and cry? You know, what if your harmony unit was also a you know, pseudo defensive option? You know, like, there, like, you can't have linear design structures, because then, well, okay, what's the point of doing anything with the game? Like, okay, well, I guess we just released all of these characters. Well, we're never releasing another character because we've already got X character that does the same thing.
Yes, a lot of the paths bleed into each other in their implementation of certain characters, so especially when it comes to dealing AoE damage, it's like almost any path can be argued to deal AoE damage in some form if you just give them a certain design. Seele can do AoE damage, quote unquote, with her resets. Like, Clara's a destruction unit, she can just blast units. Eruditions can do AoE in different ways. The random scattershot damage of Welt and Asta's skills can be AoE. Himiko breathes AoE damage.
Himiko and Herta.
Yeah, but it's not really fair to just, or in my opinion, accurate to evaluate a unit's entire role between just by looking at their past. That's more of a game design constraint on what gear do they have access to realistically.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the path is fine to have there to give you, like, a fundamental idea of what these characters share in common. but it shouldn't be seen as, well, okay, they're X-Path, so the only thing they do is X. I feel like that's just not a very healthy way to look at the game.
Either is rating them based on path. That's like tier listing the paths is just absurd to me.
Mhm.
Like,
It has the same energy as like, oh, what town are you from? Oh, I'm from this place. Ah.
F tier.
Yeah, it's just like I haven't done it. You don't know anything about me yet.
Bruh. But
I think the coolest thing about the past is that because they're not so set in stone, that means that you kind of have the opportunities later down the line to like mix and match them as you see fit. So like if we have Nihility that can deal damage, and so you can build teams around that, or you can have Nihilities that are better as supports, and so it makes the team variety just a lot more enjoyable and gives people the opportunity to like build the teams that they really want to, instead of just like, I have to conform to this specific format and I can only use a hunt in this situation.
Yeah, because I think it also helps along well, it depends on how people respond to it, I suppose, but it has the potential to help people get over the sort of like, well, like you said, like feeling of obligation to conform in order to do stuff, which in plenty of other games as well, even just like other RPGs from like ages past, people find something that works and then stick to it, and then over time, not even necessarily a long amount of time, but over some amount of time, people start to then incorrectly assume that this is therefore the only way to play, just because no one's done anything different, and it's just not true. So I like the way that they've done it, and I hope that they continue to. And I find the people saying, "Oh, I wish that paths would, like, certain characters would stay in their lane and like what their path is supposed to do," and it's like, you literally don't know that. You're not the devs. Who are you to say what they have planned?
Yeah, exactly. It's very unhealthy to go down that route. But yeah, that's an entire topic for another day that we can get into. Let's go back to Luka. Let's go back to, physical break and the various forms of bleed that we have. Mono, why don't you take this one away?
So previously, the only sources of bleed that we had access to were break bleeds specifically. And now, while break was found to be pretty good on Sushou, and by good I mean if you break every opportunity with Sushou on an all-in break build, it did similar damage to a regular carry Sushou, but the problem is there was no payoff. You were just doing the same damage, but now it was conditional. So it was just senseless to build her that way, and instead it would be similar to how we've been describing non-extreme cases of break effect. You just build her normally, and then if you get break effect as a random sub, cool. It's nice. But not something you go all in on. Now, we're at 1.1 and 1.2, where they fixed bleed to actually scale with break effect in the first place, which is good. And then 1.2, where now all sources of damage percent and defense down work with it. So now, building specifically around bleed is pretty interesting. And unlike wind shear, where the only one who directly cares about wind shear specifically is still just Sampo, then Luka's in a different boat. So with the break effect unit, specifically break effect Sushou, you can potentially get huge bleed procs with his high attack on carry build. Although he's also a great candidate to be the break effect stacker as well, and you just put him in on as a nihility buffer for Sushou. His damage vulnerability is useful, and it remains to be seen which version of that is better. But I think Sushou Luka defensive unit buffer or debuffer, depending. I will have to see which options end up being better. Has a lot of potential, just as a break build, but even beyond that, if that still doesn't pan out, just running them together is good, because Sushou just innately has 40% break effect by default with her E4, so it will... The combination will be quite interesting. I don't think a Hyper Luka would be particularly noteworthy, but
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I can see the desire for it, for people who read what he does, see that he has a forced proc on bleed, and then they might be like, oh, so he's similar to Kafka in that regard. Yes, there's a little bit more to it than that. Kafka can trigger it on every single one of her turns and her ultimate, whereas Luka can only trigger it on his enhanced basic attack, which, while he does get fairly frequently, is nowhere near the frequency that Kafka can do the same. And so you're left in this situation where if you attempt to port over a Kafka team to Luka and just replace Kafka with Luka, it's just never going to come even close. And especially with the discussion about break effect just now, and the fact that is something that you could potentially do, and that would actually be good on Luka to do. Those same teams would pretty much do nothing for Luka either. So it's unfortunately not a 1-to-1. I wouldn't build him as I wouldn't place him as the focal point of the team to build around.
yeah, you have a different centerpiece, either just a fizz carry in general, and you build him as a BE unit to supplement their game plan of doing immense rake damage, or the reverse, And he operates way too well with his stacking mechanic, encouraging him to use basic attack anyway. So it does not make sense by any stretch to just simply dump skill points into her. Using as Eris has suggested, destruction in character is also pretty good. It's a similar deal to Sushou, where break effect was nice to have previously, but going all in didn't make sense at all. And that could be another interesting avenue, even though losing preservation MC will hurt for a lot of people.
Mm.
The only other real potential like shenanigans you could do is, dare I say, with fucking Clara, but
Yes.
I really don't think you can justify building break effect on her at all. No.
Say it 3
No.
times in a mirror, and you'll summon the Clara Protection Society.
Break effect, Clara. I don't think I need to say it more than once to get everyone on there to kill me. I'm pretty sure I just ended up on a hit list somewhere, but anyway, if you're going to consider playing him with Clara, just put the break effect on him, please.
Mm.
What about you, Krim? What do you think? Anything you'd like to add about this break effect discussion?
Yeah, I'm kind of just in the same boat as everyone else. Like, I feel like he's a good option as either the break effect holder or even just having someone alongside him to help enhance his damage. And so I think both avenues, kind of the crit carry build, or not crit carry, I mean just dot carry build or the break effect build, I think both have a lot of potential to be good, so you can't really go wrong with them either way.
Yeah. But it needs some exploring. We've been crunching to get all this Kafka information out as soon as possible. We're about to get started on our work for Luka. We've mostly been going over ideas. The build is pretty similar to Kafka, thankfully, but there's a lot of fun to be had here on everyone's part, so we will definitely need to do a follow-up stream for Luka, I think.
I think maybe so it'll either be sometime during I think halfway through the week, or I think it might be next weekend. We'll see. We should, I think, be getting the 1.3 live stream next Friday or Saturday. I don't remember which one, but should be sometime next weekend. So yeah, we'll see about scheduling that. But yeah, speaking of, some of us have been having a little too much fun. You know, some of us have been partying up until crack of dawn, birds chirping, that kind of thing.
What is this unexpected slander?
So yeah, because of all that fun, you guys can expect the Kafka quick guide to be out fairly soon. So yeah, look forward to that.
You're
And
welcome.
If it doesn't come out, you guys are free to blame Sushou.
Honestly, no, I will take that. That one I will accept. If somehow it doesn't come out, that was just gonna be my fault.
God.
But yeah, after that we'll take a look at Luka, Luka.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
But yeah,
yeah,
I think we covered everything, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think we can dedicate a few more minutes to Q&A if you guys have any particular questions you'd like to ask before we wrap the stream up.
Yep. Any takers?
So we will take your questions, compile them, and then leave.
Yes.
We will not elaborate.
But yeah, and in general, if you guys have any topics or questions that you'd perhaps like us to talk about or visit, you can either DM me or you can go and drop them in the Twitch feedback channel and the Discord server. Why can't I clear MOC with my Kritka BE Clara team? I think it's a issue of the skeletal variety, particularly the upper brain housing.
The cranium.
Yes.
Might be a
Will
little
you?
cramped in there.
Yeah. Or it might be too uncramped, if you know what I mean. Will you revisit the older characters for guides? Absolutely. We will be going over some of our older characters, and the plan is to have guides out for every character.
Yeah, we
That being
are
said, yeah,
we're
go on.
recently moving away from primers, so we'll be
Mm.
going into full detail, and also full in-depth guides are also in the works. There's a Kafka guide and Clara guide in the works that we know of. Who knows? Someone might come out of the woodwork with even more in-depth guides, but we are definitely interested in doing that now that we have baseline tools to use.
For the time being, we don't really have like a set schedule for extended guides because those do depend, since they are larger in scope, they will depend on the people willing to work on them and how much time they can dedicate to it. But we are working on the quick guides and we should have some out fairly soon. Like we said earlier, the Kafka one is on its way, and then we'll be taking a look at Luka. We should also be releasing a Blade one sometime soon as well. After that, we'll revisit older characters, and then we'll see what we end up with.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, plan is quick guides for every character. Extended guides, we are taking a look at them. We are trying to work on them, but at the current time, we're not really comfortable giving set dates or even just time windows. But once they are ready, they will be out in the public, so you guys will know when they're being worked on.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of our guides, they're all public facing, so as long as you have access to the ticket wall, you'll have access to the guides.
I don't believe the Clara guide is visible, since Mist does not usually want to open the floor to that until it's ready to be editorialized. But
Yeah.
the Kafka guide is linked in the TC forum post, I believe, already.
Yeah, that should be moved to its own guide ticket once it's officially started being worked on.
It's it's ready to be worked on. It's just the lockout for a week will need to pass first.
Okay.
That's why it's not a ticket.
Fair enough. So it'll be, you know, work will be underway soon enough. Meme question aside, thanks for the stream. So you're all looking forward to the quick ads. Thank you, Wind That Skeleton. Thank you for being here.
Very much so.
Yes, thanks to everyone for sticking with us for rambling for 3 hours about
3.5.
3.5.
Oh my god. I am starving.
Yep.
Speak not to me about
quite
food.
a long time.
And this is with some emissions. This could have gone on for a fair amount longer.
We could not have done pulls with this. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd have to skip over Luka if we did that last stream.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Do you prefer these longer, more diverse podcast episodes, or do you guys prefer to have shorter, more focused ones? We kind of did branch out a little bit, and by a little bit I mean a fair amount, into adjacent topics, but we could also try to keep it very specific. It's attack boots for Sampo and Kafka Silverwolf Bailu team, right? Should I go 4-speed set on Bailu using S5 post-op on Bailu, by the way?
It would depend on how fast your Silverwolf is. Typically, once Sampo gets ramped up, it would be really funny if you just got hit by that ad as I started explaining that.
Speaking of getting hit by ads, if you guys want to avoid being hit by ads, all you have to do
They can't
is
hear
drop
you.
us a sub. Don't tell me you're actually hit by ads, guys.
I think they're actually hit by ads.
Yeah.
Adged.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh.
Oh no.
Yeah. I got the
Bruh.
Oh god.
Oh,
okay. I guess
dear.
we'll wait this out. But
We don't really have a choice.
oh my god. But doesn't it also depend on like light cone? When like an eyes Sampo not really want EHR chest?
I mean, the reason I say it depends on like how quick your Silverwolf is because in that situation, if your Silverwolf is slow, you still need to make up the speed difference because you need the SP, and Silverwolf is not. She's not like she does use SP every so often. Like you don't need to use it every single turn, but it is something that's going to consume it. And Sampo is the same way. Sampo needs to ramp up. So during the ramp up period, it's likely that you're going to be using his skill fairly frequently until you get to 5 wind shear stacks, at which point you just transition to doing basic attacks. With Bailu and Silverwolf, if Silverwolf is not infrequently using her skill, then you should be able to have enough SP in that situation to where you can run Sampo on attack boots to maximize his contribution for Kafka's skill. But otherwise, better like whichever one has the better substats, pretty much. Yeah. Did you actually get that? I was really concerned that you just got
Excellent.
ad moment.
Adged.
They're
All right,
still
well.
going.
Got it across at least.
Yeah. For those
The
of
good
you
ending.
who are here to hear me talk, as always, the VOD will be published if you want to go back and take a look through it. We'll also be putting it up on YouTube if you would like to take a look there as well. Please take a look there. We do have a YouTube channel. Just a reminder. KQM_official. Anyone?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, all of our VODs, we'll also be putting a video guide for Kafka sometime soon, TM. Probably after the quick guide comes out, but you know.
Which is sooner than soon, TM.
Yes, exactly. It is sooner than soon,
Soon.
TM. But yeah. I think that's all for this one. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you to everyone that was in the VC today. Reens had to leave a while ago. She had other she had other things to take care of. Understandably so. We did go for a very long time with this.
Yeah.
And we were joined by Mono, who you guys are familiar with, Sushou, who regularly loses his hair in MOC. Check him out.
Hi.
He'll be going. He'll probably. I'll be forcing him to go live tomorrow. Don't worry, guys.
I think
It's
he
true.
lives more here with the English language than MOC.
That too. I love the English language. It's like 3 people stacked on top of each other.
It's such a terrible language.
Yep. And Krim, who has joined us for the first time today.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, glad to make my first appearance on stream.
Indeed.
I guess second.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe we'll have Krim showcase some superior whale gameplay next time. Definitive proof that
Yeah.
even at E6 S5 you do not go crit Kafka, guys. Just
Mhm.
don't
World
fucking
Kafka
do it.
universe.
Don't build crit Kafka.
If you build crit Kafka, I will send Sushou to your house. He's not gonna do anything. He's just gonna sit there and judge you.
But
he's
I
gonna
am
judge you
very
loudly.
large, and I am gonna be. Yeah, I will be judging you loudly. I'll be. But it won't be like the wow you suck. It'll be like the very subtle. Every time you least expect it. Do you want that? Of course you don't. Don't build crit Kafka.
Sushou is literally just
Yes,
stares.
Kafka is attack and speed boots. But yeah, that's all for this time. Thank you guys, and we'll see you for the next one.
Yep.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Peace.
See ya.